What do you say we punch some tickets to AT&T Stadium in Arlington? This is the 2019 Texas High School Football State Semifinals. These are the picks. Welcome into the picks presented by Visit Arlington, your guide to the Texas High School Football weekend. My name is Greg Tepper of Dave Campbell's Texas Football and TexasFootball.com. Thanks for tuning in. And welcome to the cruelest round of the playoffs. And I say that every year, but it's true. We're in the state semifinals. There are 20 games this week. There are 40 teams, and there's only 20 spots at AT&T Stadium. What that means is that you're going to have 20 teams that realize their dream. They're going to get to play on the biggest stage of them all next week on national television at AT&T Stadium. And then there's also 20 more that are going to come so agonizingly close and fall short. If you win this week, you're written in history forever. If you lose this week, well, there are 20 games this week. I'm going to go through each and every one of them. We're going to go from the smallest classification to the largest. So we will start in Plainview. 7 o'clock Thursday at Sherwood Memorial Stadium in Plainview. It's a 2A Division II state semifinal between the Stratford Elks and the Hamlin Pied Pipers. And this is the rare state semifinal rematch. We already saw this game in the regular season where Stratford rolled to a dominating win over Hamlin. Now, I do think that things have changed a little bit. I think most notably, I think Hamlin's offense has really gotten into gear. Braden Warner, their quarterback, has been really good, and their defense has taken a step forward. This is a tough road to hoe, though, because Auden Romero, the running back for Stratford, has been terrific all year long. Quarterback Walker McBride, a fantastic compliment. And their defense, they turn the ball over. And in fact, if you go back to their regular season meeting, the reason Stratford won was that they forced turnovers on Hamlin. Can they do it again this time? I think it's really hard to beat a good team twice. And I think this game is really hard to call, one of the hardest games to call in all of the state semifinals. But I think Hamlin's right in the hot hand right now, and I think that they are significantly better than they were the time they met in the regular season. I think this game is close, but I think Hamlin pulls out a narrow win and advances to the state championship game. 7 o'clock Friday at the field in Pflugerville. It is the other 2A Division II state semifinal between the Mart Panthers and the Fall City Beavers, and this is the game we pretty much had circled since the beginning of the year. We thought that this was going to be that state semifinal that would determine who goes to AT&T Stadium, and I know both coaches kind of anticipated seeing each other in the state semifinals. You know, Fall City last week got a scare from Bremond, but what do you say about running back Brady Lissy? This guy is a superstar and is capable of taking this game over and grinding it out on the ground. You know, for Mart, they took 3 losses in the regular season, but since then, man, they have been rolling, and they've gotten this offense really humming with Kyler Martin, their quarterback, as well as the running back defensive end monster Rodrell Freeman that basically nobody has an answer for. If you go back to their meeting in last year's state semifinals, I think Fall City had a great game plan, which was keep the ball away from Mart. They went on long, sustained drives and were able to shorten this game. That's what they have to do in this one. But I think that Mart's explosiveness is the difference. I think that's what's going to guide them to a win. I think this game has a chance to be close into the fourth quarter, but I think Mart pulls away. Give me the Panthers. 7 o'clock Thursday at Gordonwood Stadium in Brownwood. It's a 2A Division I state semifinal between the Post Antelopes and the Valley View Eagles. What? What are you guys doing here? This is supposed to be San Saba. Yeah, the Eagles pulled off the stunner last week, 14-12. Over the previously unbeaten Armadillos, and man, they did it by doing all the little things right. The special teams were great. The defensive line was great. They were able to run the ball just enough with Clint Epperson to get enough offense, but this was a game that was determined by the little things. And I'll tell you, what Curtis King has cooking there at Valley View is for real, and it is sustainable. Now they're up against a very big challenge in Post, and I mean a big challenge, meaning this is a very sizable Post team. They've got big size in the trenches, and they use it to run the ball with Tatum Thetford and Ashton Jefferson. This is a dangerous, physical Post team that I think Valley View needs to be ready. Their defensive line needs to have another spectacular game. The question for me is going to be, can the Valley View offense get rolling? Last week they got what they needed, but just barely offensively. They've got to get some offense from this freshman quarterback, as well as a big game from Clint Epperson. I think that the Post defense might be a little bit too much. I think this game has a chance to be very close, and maybe if Valley View can keep the score low, that's the kind of game they want to play. But I think Post's offense is just got a little bit too much physicality. I think the Antelopes go to the state championship game. 7 o'clock Thursday at Cy-Fair FCU Stadium in Cypress. It's the Barry Center. It's kind of what we all know it as. The Refugio Bobcats take on the St. Augustine Wolves in a 2A Division I state semifinal. And St. Augustine mowed through Region 3, kind of like we thought they were going to, and Jaden Hicks, their quarterback, has been spectacular. Really, really good, and this offense is hitting on all cylinders. Well, here comes Refugio, and from the jump, we thought that the Region 4 winner was going to have the inside edge, not only to make it to AT&T Stadium, but to win the state championship. Well, that Region 4 winner is Refugio, and their offense looked spectacular last week against Holland. They have been rolling. But there are some questions about health. Jordan Kelly, their star wide receiver, was injured in their game against Holland last week, and Austin Ochoa, their starting quarterback, was noticeably limping towards the end of this game. What is the status of both of those guys? If both those guys play, I really like Refugio in this game. I think that their offensive explosiveness is going to be the kind of thing that gives St. Augustine's defense some fits. But depending on how healthy they are, this game could get very hairy. I still like Refugio. Keep an eye on this one. I think this is closer than the past couple of years when Region 3 has met Region 4, but I think the result is in the end the same. I like Refugio to make it back to a state championship game. 7 o'clock Friday night at Lions Stadium in Vernon. It's a 3A Division II state semifinal between the Canadian Wildcats and the Gunter Tigers. Again, for the fourth consecutive year, these two teams will do battle in a state semifinal. And if you remember this time last year, we were having a conversation about whether or not Gunter just had Canadian's number. They had won the previous two meetings between these two squads, but last year, Canadian reversed the whip and with a tremendous defensive effort came away with a victory. This is going to be an interesting test for this Canadian defense. I don't think this Gunter offense is as explosive as it was in past years. They're still very good, and we know how good this offense can be, especially when Peyton Lowe, their running back, really gets going. They don't have individual superstars, but they are a team that is absolutely humming right now. And what I like about Gunter is that this is a team, especially on the defensive side, that you come into this game with a game plan and they just muck it up. And they say, no, you're going to play our style of game, which is going to be a low-scoring, hard-hitting slugfest. The question is going to be what happens when the Canadian offense, led by quarterback Grant McCook, takes aim at what has been an outstanding Gunter defense. That said, I think this is a big step forward for the Canadian defense. Last week against a dynamic Abernathy team, they gave up 31 points and really were kind of hanging on for dear life, but I think that defense steps up big. I think that this game, like every time it seems like Gunter and Canadian play, I think this game comes down to probably who has the ball last. But I think Canadian makes enough defensive stops and gets enough big plays from their quarterback to come away with a win and go back to AT&T Stadium. 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Waco ISD Stadium. It's the other 3A Division II state semifinal between the Omaha Paul Pewitt Brahmas and the East Bernard Brahmas. That's right, it's Brahma on Brahma violence here in 3A Division II. And these are two teams that are similar and yet different. These are two teams that rely on running the ball. Quarterback Cross Holder for Paul Pewitt has this wing T attack really humming. Meanwhile, Kobe Brown leads a dynamic slot T attack for East Bernard that has really been humming and nobody's found a way to slow it down. But what's going to be interesting is that I think that wing T offense, while it's humming, I think East Bernard's defense has seen something like it. I'm not quite sure that Paul Pewitt's defense has seen something quite like they're going to see from the East Bernard offense. I think the difference here is the East Bernard Brahmas defense. That comes through with enough stops to get East Bernard back to the state championship game. 7 o'clock Thursday at the Ford Center in Frisco. It is a 3A Division I state semifinal between the Brock Eagles and the Pottsboro Cardinals, and maybe we were a little bit premature in throwing dirt on Brock earlier in the year when they took 2 losses, because the Eagles are doing that thing where they're just playing their best football in the playoffs, and it's been really impressive to watch. Their running game has really gotten going with Cash Jones running the ball, and their defense is the star. Their defense has held them in games even when the offense has at times scuffled. Well, here comes Pottsboro, and Pottsboro undefeated on the year, the winners of Region 2, and feeling very good about themselves, most notably because of their offense. Quarterback Brandon Plyler has been great, and Titus Lyons, their receiver, is a mismatch. He is one of the bigger receivers in 3A, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when this very aggressive Brock defense plays a 10-1, goes up against this high-powered Pottsboro attack. But on the other side is where I think Brock is going to have an advantage. I think their physicality in the trenches and their ability to run the ball is going to be the difference. I think Brock wins a squeaker in this one and makes it back to the title game, Give me the Eagles. 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Reeves Stadium in Round Rock. It's the other 3A Division I state semifinal between the Grandview Zebras and the Columbus Cardinals. And let's just take a moment to admire what Columbus has done this year. This is a really impressive run for the Cardinals, and a lot of it comes down to their big offensive line and Tyree Simchick, their running back, who has been sensational. He went for almost 300 yards in their win last week over Hallettsville. Here comes a big challenge, though, to the defending state champs in Grandview, who are playing exceptionally well right now. And the thing is that for all we talk about Dane Yench, and for all we talk about Demetrius Crownover, and for all we talk about some of these outstanding playmakers that Grandview has, fundamentally, they're just a big physical team. And I think that that is going to be the difference. I think they're going to be able to match Columbus in the trenches. And that's the big key for them, because then you let your skill position guys run wild. I think this game could be pretty high scoring, actually. I think there could be points scored in this one. But in the end, I think that Grandview's defense finds enough stops and their offensive line is able to win in the trenches. I think the Zebras go back to defend their crown at AT&T Stadium. 6 o'clock Friday at the Star in Frisco. It is a 4A Division II state semifinal between the Pleasant Grove Hawks and the Midland Greenwood Rangers. And for Greenwood, you know, they got a scare last week from Iowa Park, but you talk about heart of the champions type stuff. Running back Trey Cross plunges in for a touchdown in the final minutes to put them ahead, and their defense comes up with a big stop down the stretch. That said, here is the biggest test of the year by far for Greenwood, because Pleasant Grove is absolutely loaded. It's not just their offense, right? It's not just that pass-heavy wing T where they run the ball so dynamically and they throw the ball with quarterback Ben Harmon out of that wing T. No, it's not that. The thing that separates them in 4A Division II, and what I think guides the way to a win in this one, is going to be their defensive line, because Marcus Burris and Landon Jackson are just plain old superstars up front. This defense is nasty, and I think that they're going to be able to dominate in the trenches up front. I'm not sure Greenwood has seen a defensive line quite like they're going to see in Pleasant Grove. I think that is the difference. I think Pleasant Grove goes back to a third straight state championship. 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Legacy Stadium in Katy. It's a 4A Division II state semifinal between... No, I'm sorry. This is... it says Silsbee and Wimberley. That must be a mistake. That's supposed to be Geronimo Navarro and West Orange Stark. That is, really? Oh, okay. Both teams pulled off at least minor upsets last week to get to a state semifinal, with Silsbee getting an outstanding come-from-behind win over pretty much their nemesis in West Orange Stark. And the running game with Draylen Taylor was really impressive to watch. Not to mention their defense stepped up in a big, big way down the stretch. For Wimberley, they avenged their regular season loss to Geronimo Navarro with gusto, and quarterback Cooper McCollum is on another level right now. He might be playing the best quarterback of any player in the state right now. He has been outstanding, and that's what makes this game really hard to call, because normally you could say, oh, I'm going to go with the hot hand. What do you do with both teams who are absolutely with the hot hand? In the end, I'm going to go with the hotter offense, and I think that is Wimberley. I think that if their offensive line can hold up against what's a very dangerous Silsbee front, I think the Texans can get the win. I think Wimberley goes to the state championship game. 7 o'clock Friday at Midlothian ISD Stadium. It is a 4A Division I state semifinal between the Springtown Porcupines and the Waco La Vega Pirates. And what a job Springtown did last week against previously unbeaten Dumas. That was a defense there for Dumas that was playing exceptionally well, and Springtown was able to blow that game wide open with an outstanding game from running back Cameron Rickett. Not to mention their defense set them up for success. They forced a number of turnovers to really blow that game open. But here's the problem. And the problem is that someone made Waco La Vega mad, because they are playing angry. Go ask Argyle if they enjoyed playing the Pirates last week, because this Waco La Vega team is really starting to hit their stride. Quarterback Landry Kinney, I think, has really settled in, and they're getting that running game going with Jaquay Walton and Elisha Cummings. This team is really, really impressive. But forget all those offensive weapons. The reason that Waco La Vega is the favorite in this game, and the reason I'm picking them to go back to defend their crown, is because their defensive line is vicious. They absolutely dominated Argyle in the trenches last week, and I think they're going to be able to do the same thing this week. I think Waco La Vega goes back to AT&T Stadium. 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Texan Drive Stadium in Porter. It's a 4A Division I state semifinal between the Carthage Bulldogs and the Lampasas Badgers, and I can tell you all about how much I like the offensive line for Carthage. I can tell you about how impressed I've been by Kai Horton. I can tell you about the defense for Lampasas, which has a knack for the big play, but forget all that. We know why we're here. I want to see what happens when Ace Whitehead and the Lampasas offense takes aim at Carthage. That's the whole game here. That's the fun part of covering this sport, is when you get matchups like this, because Ace Whitehead for Lampasas has, plain and simple, been one of the best players in the state. He's been unbelievable. That game last week was absolutely sensational in their win over Liberty Hill. You know, the Carthage defense has been lights out pretty much all year long, and I am very interested to see what happens when Scott Surratt and that coaching staff for Carthage game plan for a dynamic individual playmaker like Ace Whitehead. Now, the other side of the ball is where I think Carthage has the advantage. I think that offense with the aforementioned Kai Horton, their outstanding wide receiver in Kelvonte Dixon, not to mention a big physical offensive line led by Tykeus Crawford. I think that is the difference for Carthage. I think the Bulldogs are heading back to AT&T Stadium with a win. 3 o'clock Saturday at Anthony Field in Abilene. It's a 5A Division II state semifinal between the Lubbock Cooper Pirates and the Aledo Bearcats, and Aledo got a big push last week. And if you want to throw up a red flag, I think that there is fair argument to do it. They had to go to overtime to beat Ennis, and suddenly that defense looks a little bit shaky. I'm not particularly worried, though. I think the defense has been pretty rock solid all year long, but they need to shore it up against a Lubbock Cooper running game that is really starting to play outstanding. With Nehemiah Martinez and Isaiah Johnson, this running game has been terrific. But I'm just not sure Lubbock Cooper is going to be able to slow down Aledo. I think that Jace McClellan and Jake Bishop, most notably, have been outstanding, and I think that is what is the difference. Beyond that, just historically, Aledo has dominated Region 1. Whenever they get into these semifinals, they have been the team to beat. I see no reason to go away from that. I think the Bearcats head back to AT&T Stadium to defend their crown. 3 o'clock Saturday at Kyle Field in College Station. It's a 5A Division II state semifinal between the Fort Bend Marshall Buffaloes and the Boerne Champion Chargers. And what a job this champion team has done with Coach Keith Kaiser hitting the Jets at the right time. And I'll tell you, man, Luke Boyer's their quarterback. He is fun to watch. That kid can absolutely play, and this is a team that their offense is brimming with confidence right now. They just hung 49 on Corpus Christi Calallen last week, and they have been humming pretty much ever since the playoffs started. But when you talk about regions, they each have their own styles, right? Region 4 is a lot more of a plodding, grinded out game where a team like Boerne Champion can out-athlete a lot of teams. They're not going to be able to out-athlete Fort Bend Marshall. In fact, I don't know if anybody in the state at any level can out-athlete Fort Bend Marshall. The guys they've got, most notably Devonna Chan, who has put on the cape this playoffs, and their quarterback Malik Hornsby. But the difference for Fort Bend Marshall in the playoffs, and the reason they beat Manville last week, is because their defense is playing exceptionally well. I think they're going to be able to find some stops, and they're going to let guys like Devonna Chan do the rest. I think Fort Bend Marshall's heading back to AT&T Stadium. 2 o'clock Saturday at Eagle Stadium in Allen. It's a 5A Division I state semifinal between the Denton Ryan Raiders and the Frisco Lone Star Rangers. And battle of unbeatens, check. 2 big offenses, check. 2 outstanding playmaking defenses, check. This game has everything. We know what Frisco Lone Star is, right? Their resume really speaks for itself, not just their 2 wins over Highland Park, but also their win last week over Lancaster. They've got the all-time single-season receiving yards record holder now in wide receiver Marvin Mims. They've got a number of other weapons on the outside. They've got a great running back in Jake Bogdan, a terrific quarterback in Garrett Rangel, and a defense that makes plays. Denton Ryan, we know is really good, but we don't really know how they measure up against the other really good teams in 5A Division I because they haven't really played them. I mean, we just really don't know a ton about exactly how good Denton Ryan is. Now, I know that they are loaded, right? They've got Billy Bowman, they've got Drew Sanders, they've got Amani Bailey, they've got playmakers all over the field. But my question is, what happens when they face a team that is as good as they are, right? Because we know Frisco Lone Star is an elite team. Denton Ryan is an elite team too, but they haven't played any other elite teams. This is their big test. My question is going to be up front. What happens when the Denton Ryan offensive line goes up against the front seven for Frisco Lone Star? If Amani Bailey gets running for Denton Ryan, they've got a great chance to win this game. But my key in this one is that Frisco Lone Star has played in late and close games, and Denton Ryan simply hasn't. This game's probably going to be tight in the fourth quarter, and for Denton Ryan, a lot of their guys play both ways. I think that Frisco Lone Star's stamina and the fact that they are battle-tested is what ends up winning out. I think Frisco Lone Star heads to AT&T Stadium. 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Alamo Stadium in San Antonio. It's a 5A Division I state semifinal between the Alvin Shadow Creek Sharks and the San Antonio Wagner Thunderbirds. And hey, do you remember last week when I picked Corpus Christi Veterans Memorial to upset San Antonio Wagner? They might have heard me. 74-14, Wagner put it on Corpus Christi Vets, and that offense was just demolishing people. L.J. Butler was terrific. That offensive line completely dominated, and most importantly, the big difference for Wagner was their defensive line was terrific. They were absolutely blowing up everything that Corpus Christi Vets could do, and that's the big challenge for Alvin Shadow Creek. Their offensive line has to hold up against a big, dynamic defensive line for San Antonio Wagner. Shadow Creek has really not been pushed too much this year. They got pushed a couple of weeks ago against Richmond Foster, but the difference for this Sharks team is quarterback Kyron Jones. I think that he has added a new element to this offense that makes them more dynamic. I think this game is close into about the third quarter, but that's when I think that the playmakers for Shadow Creek start to pull away. I think Alvin Shadow Creek is heading back to AT&T Stadium. 1 o'clock Saturday at Sheldon ISD's Panther Stadium in Houston. It is a 6A Division II state semifinal between the Denton Guyer Wildcats and the Spring Westfield Mustangs. And for Spring Westfield, the time is now for them to take their big close-up, because this team, I think everybody's starting to notice exactly how good this team is. It's not just that they're able to run the ball with Kendall Taylor, but I think their defense is what sets them apart. Their defensive front has been spectacular. Now they're going up against a Denton Guyer squad that has playmakers to burn, right? It's not just quarterback Eli Stowers. It's not just running back Kadrick Cos, but it's the guys on the outside. And as we saw last week against Amarillo Tascosa, their defensive line has been excellent for Denton Guyer this year. I think a lot of this game comes down to the sophomore quarterback Cardell Williams for Spring Westfield. He has to make them multiple. He cannot let Denton Guyer key on the running game, because if that happens, Denton Guyer's defense is peaking at the right time. Beyond that, I think that Guyer just has too many weapons, and even with a long road trip all the way down to Houston, I think Denton Guyer comes back to AT&T Stadium and plays for a state championship. 2 o'clock Saturday at McLean Stadium in Waco. It's a 6A Division II state semifinal between the Katy Taylor Mustangs and the Austin Westlake Chaparrals. Katy Taylor, who finished 4th in their district. You know what's weird? I haven't heard a ton of people talking about how too many teams make the playoffs when you've got a 4th place team in the semifinals. That's weird. It's at Tepper on Twitter. Let me know. Anyway, Katy Taylor has been a terrific story. Running back Casey Shorter and their quarterback Jay Jensen III have really led this offense. That win last week over Cy Creek was impressive, and their defense feeds their offense. Their defense turns the ball over, sets them up for success. This is a huge, huge test for them, though, and probably the biggest test they have faced basically since district play, going up against a Westlake team that their defense has been great all year long, but I think as soon as they named the starter at quarterback with Kirkland Michaud, I think that has given their offense a little extra jolt. I think you saw that last week against San Antonio Brandeis. If Katy Taylor can get this game into a shootout, that is their best bet to pull the stunner. But I think Westlake's heading for AT&T Stadium. Give me the Shabs. 2:30 p.m. Saturday at McKinney ISD Stadium. It's a 6A Division I state semifinal between the Duncanville Panthers and the Rockwall Yellow Jackets. And if you like two big offenses, then you will like this one. You know, Duncanville has really started to let the reins off of this offense, and I think you're starting to see it. Quarterback Jaquinnon Jackson was excellent last week in guiding a more than 500-yard attack for this Duncanville offense against Southlake Carroll. And for Rockwall, look, you probably know about them by now. I mean, quarterback Braden Locke and, of course, wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba have been absolutely insane. One of the best offenses in the state of Texas. And I'll tell you that the Duncanville defense against the Rockwall offense is must-see TV. This is a heavyweight prize fight that is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I want to see what happens. How does Duncanville scheme against Rockwall? And the other thing is, you know that the coaching matchup in this one with Rodney Webb on one side and Reginald Samples on the other is going to be a fantastic one. But in the end, the defense I trust more is Duncanville's. I think that they're able to come up with enough plays. Last week they were able, even though they gave up 500 yards of offense to South Lake Carroll, they were able to shut them out in the third quarter, and that ended up being the difference. I do think this game has a chance to be pretty high scoring, but I think that Duncanville comes away with the stops they need, and I think the Panthers are heading back to AT&T Stadium. And 4 o'clock Saturday at Reef Stadium in Round Rock, it's a 6A Division I state semifinal between the Galena Park North Shore Mustangs and the Lake Travis Cavaliers. Lake Travis last week got pushed by Converse Judson in a big way. And in fact, early in that game, it looked pretty dicey, and we thought we might be talking about the Rockets playing in this one. But 2 things happened. One, the defense started making plays, and that defensive front started playing well for the Cavaliers. That was step 1. Step 2 is that quarterback Hudson Card settled in. Remember, he's been injured for a long time this year. He is now back, and he settled in and started to get his groove. Beyond that, I think they're starting to get that running game going, which takes a little bit of pressure off of Hudson Card to do everything. Well, here's Galena Park North Shore. And all the Mustangs did last week was ring up 804 yards of total offense against Atascocita. And you know how we were talking about Duncanville earlier, about how they've let the reins off of their offense? Same thing for the Mustangs, because Demetrius Davis and Zachary Evans are frightening at this point. The way that they are running the ball, they ran for almost 500 yards last week on Atascocita. Now, look, I don't think the defense is maybe as good as it was last year. And I think that there are going to be plays to be made for Lake Travis. But I'm just not sure how they slow down Galena Park North Shore. I think that the physical upfront mismatch is what does the deal for Galena Park North Shore. I think the Mustangs are heading back to AT&T Stadium to defend their crown. And those are the picks. That's all 20 state semifinals. And so let me know, what am I wrong about? I know you will. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at DCTF. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Dave Campbell's. Follow us on Instagram, instagram.com/Dave Campbell's. And, of course, see us at texasfootball.com, where you can find complete coverage of the 2019 Texas High School Football Playoffs and the 2019 Texas High School Football State Championship games at texasfootball.com. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the Texas High School Football State Semifinals. We'll see you.